Today, we're unpacking what is genuinely a towering landmark of world literature. Published back in 1878, Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina is absolutely not just some dusty, tedious 19th century period piece. No, it's a brilliant, sweeping masterclass in realist tragedy and high-stakes social drama.
At the very heart of this mammoth novel lies a rather devastating question. What happens when our pursuit of personal happiness collides head-on with the strict, unforgiving rules of society? Picture it like a fatal, completely unstoppable train collision between a person's deepest, most desperate desires and the incredibly rigid expectations of the Russian aristocracy.
To really grasp why this book still holds up so well today, we've got to talk about psychological realism. This is without a doubt Tolstoy's greatest strength. He doesn't bother with simple cartoon heroes and villains. Instead, he writes incredibly complicated, sometimes terribly flawed, but utterly recognizable human beings. It's exactly why his sharp observations about relationships and human emotions feel so remarkably spot on and relevant to us right now.
Anna's tragic romance, A Fatal Collision. We are stepping straight into the suffocating, gossip-fueled ballrooms of St. Petersburg, which is exactly where this famous, taboo romance starts to unfold.
Let's look at the three key players who make up this disastrous love triangle. First up, you have Anna Karenina herself. She is fiercely intelligent, highly passionate, but she's battling these terribly deep personal insecurities and desperately searching for genuine love. Then you've got Count Vronsky. Charming? Absolutely. Ambitious? Yes. But to be brutally honest, his capacity for real, enduring romantic passion is rather dreadfully limited. And finally, there's Alexei Karenin, Anna's husband. He basically embodies everything the aristocracy values: duty, reputation, and this incredibly cold, unyielding devotion to social convention.
The real tragedy is what happens when these completely different forces inevitably clash. Love becomes highly destructive when it's dominated by fear and possessiveness. Anna's affair doesn't just rock the boat, it completely shatters the strict moral standards of her world. Because she challenges those rules, she is ruthlessly and systematically isolated from her husband, her child, and her entire social circle. That isolation slowly twists her initial passion into this terribly destructive, all-consuming jealousy.
Levin's philosophical journey, the search for meaning. Thankfully, Tolstoy doesn't just leave us trapped in that suffocating city air. We pivot out to the wide-open, breathing Russian countryside to meet Konstantin Levin, and we get a much warmer, introspective shift in tone.
This shift is where you really see the sheer architectural genius of Tolstoy's writing. It's all about the contrast. On one hand, you have Anna's destructive passion, which just leads to total social isolation and tragedy. But on the other hand, you have Levin, who provides the absolute perfect structural counterweight. He's a deeply thoughtful man, actively struggling with honest work, faith, family, and finding actual meaning in life. It is brilliantly done.
Love versus social convention, the unforgiving aristocracy. Right, let's bring both of these character tracks together to synthesize the massive, overarching themes of the novel.
Tolstoy is absolutely ruthless in exposing the double standards and the downright hypocrisy of the Russian elite, showing how their expectations violently conflict with personal happiness. He also gives us these contrasting, unfiltered realities of marriage. He shows different kinds of unions to highlight both their immense, grinding difficulties and their genuine potential for happiness. And ultimately, he's chronicling the universal human search for purpose in a world that aggressively demands conformity.
Now, I suppose we must address the absolute sheer weight of the book. It is famously, intimidatingly massive, and yes, it occasionally detours into incredibly detailed, sometimes rather slow discussions on 19th century Russian politics and, of all things, agriculture. I know, it sounds like a bit of a slog to suddenly find yourself knee-deep in Victorian farming techniques. But honestly, these tangents are entirely essential world-building. They perfectly anchor Tolstoy's much broader, overarching critique of society. So stick with it, it's worth it.
The final verdict, beyond a love story. Because this really is so much more than just a historical soap opera or a simple tragedy.
It easily earns a massive 9.5 out of 10 from us. Anna Karenina is a profound, beautifully written examination of people wrestling with their own inherent weaknesses. I highly recommend it for anyone even remotely interested in classic literature, psychology, the messy reality of human relationships, and deep philosophical questions.